Welcome to Tank Talk. I'm your host, Bob Tankard. And this evening, or subtle afternoon, we're here at Shearer Cottage with my co-host, Mr. Alton Hardaway, and the host we have is Lee Van Allen. Shearer Cottage, we're celebrating Shearer Cottage's 100th year of this magnificent, and the memories are unbelievable. What do you think, Al?
I think it's fabulous, and I'm glad that we were invited to do this.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Now, you know, the story comes with family. So we're going to give this to Lee, because Lee is not only the owner, but one of the owners of the original Mr. Shearer. So Lee, take it. Tell us a little bit about the beginning of Shearer, going back to the 1800s. How did this famous historic place come about?
Well, if I start really with Charles Shearer, who was the founder of Shearer Cottage, he was born a slave in Spanish Oaks, Appomattox County in Virginia, the son of a slave owner and his black slave. And he was born in, I believe, 1854. And as a young child, basically what he did is hunt and fish. And he lived in the woods much of the time. And as the Northern Army was coming down into the Lynchburg area, the slave master, Shearer, gathered up all his silver and his slaves and his valuables to move to Georgia.
Right.
And
Further south.
Further south. And Charles Shearer, my grandfather, said he wasn't going with his master, father, and he said, I'm going to join the Union Army.
Wow.
So he got a beating, and he was chained in the barn. Charles Shearer had to leave. The master had to leave quickly because the Union forces were coming so quickly to his area that they left Charles Shearer in the barn. And that's where the Union soldiers found him. And they allowed him, meaning Charles Shearer, my great-grandfather, to travel with him as a scout, giving, fishing for them, hunting for them, helping them survive.
Using his expertise.
Right, his expertise, what he knew best, as my Aunt Liz would say. And when he was a young man, he worked as a laborer in Lynchburg, but when he was approximately 20 years old, he enrolled at Hampton Institute. And it's now Hampton University, but Hampton Institute was founded to educate former slaves, blacks that were free, and Native Americans. So he graduated from Hampton. He stayed on and taught at Hampton. And he met his wife, who was a African-American and Native American young woman who also came to Hampton to learn to read and write. They married. They taught in the area for a while, and then in the late 1800s, they decided to move north for a better life. And Charles Shearer was a very smart gentleman, and he held the position of head waiter in the Young's Hotel and the Parker House. There's a
in Boston.
In Boston, when he moved north, he was the head waiter, and he prospered. He did very well. And he used to come to Martha's Vineyard because he was a devout Baptist. And he actually joined the Tremont Temple, the historic Tremont Temple Baptist Church in Boston. He joined that, and the Tremont Temple was the first integrated church in America. And he joined that in the late 1800s. And probably through their visits to the island, because Cottage City, as it was known then, was a very religious town. He was exposed to Cottage City, and he decided to buy this property that overlooks the Baptist Temple grounds right below us.
Is that right?
That's why he chose this property. And he would walk down to church with his family every Sunday.
How much of the property, we see other houses here, but how much did he own?
This has since been subdivided.
It has been. Actually, this was all family owned, but through either being sold out the family or divorces, now primarily we have Shearer and the land in back and the land in front. But he did have more than what we see here. And what happened is so many friends came to visit him. At that time in Martha's Vineyard, the late 1800s, he bought this property in 1903, and he had another property in the late 1800s. But when he was here, so many friends and family came to visit him.
He was that successful.
He was very successful. And there were very few black families in Oak Bluffs at that time, Cottage City, as it was called. And So if you were going to come, you had to stay with friends because the other establishments were not open to you.
That's right.
And I believe he saw a business opportunity. And being in the hospitality business, he built a 12-room house, and he opened an inn that catered to African Americans. And that we can date because he wrote back letters to Hampton Institute when they asked him, oh, what are you doing with your life? And he said, well, I really don't have anything special to share with you, but we just built, last year, we just built a 12-room house and opened a summer inn in conjunction with our laundry, because when they bought this property in 1903, they had a laundry. And so
now, when the laundry, was it just servicing just the inn, or was it servicing
the inn hadn't
other facilities on the island?
It serviced wealthy white families in East Chop, in the area, and what their specialty was fluting the big petticoats that were worn in the day. That was Henrietta Shearer's specialty. So when they opened the inn in 1912, Henrietta was still alive. And as it said in the letter, we have 8 good women working for us in the laundry, and we've opened up a summer inn. And then when Henrietta passed away in 1917, they closed the laundry, and they turned the area that was primarily to do laundry, they created other rooms.
And, you know, the thing about it, Alton and I often talk about it, all the celebrities. How did he get all those celebrities? I'm talking about legendary.
Well, again, you have to realize that if they wanted to come to Martha's Vineyard,
even though they were legendary, they
even
didn't
though they
have
were
no place else
they
to
were
stay.
at that time. Now there was a branch of the family. His brother settled in New York, and his niece often came. Lucy Shearer often came to visit, and she was friendly with Paul Robeson and Adam Clayton Powell, and she brought a lot of
like
the New
Harlem
Yorkers.
Renaissance people.
Exactly.
She brought a lot of the New Yorkers that came to stay at Shearer Cottage. And Harry T. Burley was a longtime friend and came. Roland B. Hayes, Lillian Avanti, considered to be the first African-American worldwide known opera singer. Harry T. Burley is credited with saving the Negro spirituals. Roland B. Hayes was a worldwide known singer. There were so many individuals that came and stayed, and Charles Shearer's daughter, Sadie, she really ran the cottage for like over 50 years with great love, great care, great grace, and they had fabulous meals twice a day, and it just, the word got out. This Shearer Cottage in those early years, that was the place to come. That was the place.
You know, I can remember and you know, Alton, you probably, I remember walking through when we first came here in 1959, and my sisters and everybody met you guys and the Van Allens and Bobo and all those guys. To get to Shearer Cottage from Wayland Avenue was a path that walked straight through.
It's still there.
We used to walk through there at night, and it was dark. Oh man!
It's still
but we'd
there.
come up here and they'd have the parties and the, you know, for the teens. And it was we had a good time at that time.
We had a very good
time.
time.
And those are the times that you remember, that I can remember of the Shearer Cottage. But recently, over the last 20 years, the true history has become renowned. When I say renowned, people on the island, people around, understand where Shearer Cottage, plus the different books that have been written over the last 20 years.
And they always mention it. But as a young person, I remember coming up here for the parties, and we used to see
the party animal house.
The Commodores
for
35 cents for a ticket.
35
cents. 35 cents for a ticket.
My cousin Benny,
and you saw the Commodores here.
Right. My cousin Benny managed the Commodores.
That's
so
right,
when
too.
they
That's
were
right.
first getting their act together, he brought them up, and they spent summers here. And they played on the beach. They played at the old Seaview Hotel. They played even at Ocean View. They had them. And so you know, the sort of the era of famous people continued. You know, the Commodores, you know, came and we loved them.
Lionel and the Commodores.
Tell us this, because this is important. Now, you know, the guard is passed on, and now you're Shearer Cottage. What do you want to do down the road as you see Shearer Cottage as what it is today? Where do you want to take it?
Well, you know, it's very interesting because there's much I could do to change it. The thing about Shearer Cottage is I think in my personal opinion, part of its charm is to leave it much the way it was, so that when people come to Shearer Cottage, it's almost like they're walking back in time,
Right.
and they're seeing the Shearer Cottage of yesteryear. Not just Shearer Cottage, but the homes of
But
yesteryear.
with the
antiques.
exception, before it was just rooms. Now they're studio apartments.
Right.
Right, that's we
Yeah.
did my mother's generation in the 60s. Because so many people coming, they at least wanted their own bathrooms as
Right,
opposed to
right,
shared
right,
bathrooms.
right.
So they took the 12 rooms and shared bathrooms and made them into 6 studios. But those studios are furnished with a lot of the old antique furniture.
Man.
And I want to keep the flavor as close as to what I can, because I think that's part of the charm. I really think people appreciate that. And if you don't, if you feel as though you have to have air conditioning and some of those more modern conveniences, well, there certainly are other places
Are
that
you
you can
preparing
stay.
your children?
My children have made the commitment to carry on Shearer Cottage, and I am. I'm very happy that when some property that was in the family went up for sale, and my son purchased it. My son and his wife. So I really feel that Shearer still has a good future
Good,
here.
good,
I really do.
good.
And my children, I think one reason why they're so invested in Shearer Cottage is they all worked here as kids. They all worked here.
That's great.
Chambermaids.
So they know
washing-
some of the legacy.
So they know,
part of it.
and they were
History,
part
right?
of it, and they're so proud of it. And even today, at the end of the program, we're going to have a brief, you even might like to talk to her about it, a brief segment of my granddaughter Camille's
Okay.
college essay.
Okay.
And she writes about coming to her great-grandfather, great-great-great-great-grandfather's place to work for the summers and how important that was for her. And so we're fortunate, we didn't have to force that on the children. It just came
It just came
naturally.
naturally.
And I think that's
Well,
because
they saw you doing it.
we saw it's what we do. It's what we do as Shearers.
Excuse me. Lee, I know you're busy. I know you got to run. And we're going to be right back. Don't go away. Hey, welcome back to the 100th anniversary of Shearer Cottage. Alton, you're on, my brother.
Yes, I want to introduce Horace Shearer. And Horace, you are the grandson of Charles Shearer.
Correct.
The founder of Shearer
The
Cottage.
founder of Shearer Cottage, right.
Okay.
And I've had many, many pleasant years down here growing up. One of the things I remember very clearly is the dining room. None of the family members were supposed to go in the dining room to eat. And one year, all of us were standing in the kitchen, looking through the serving window, and Benny Ashburn was sitting down at a table with a guest eating. And everyone had come look at Benny sitting in there with this young lady eating. And this was the first time that Aunt Sadie allowed any of us to go in there and eat, and that's because Benny had finally gotten a job.
He could pay.
And
Now, Benny was the one that was actually the manager
Of
of
the
the
Commodores,
Commodores.
right.
yeah. So Benny sort of broke the ice that allowed us to eventually walk through the dining room. That was a big deal. But our job then was washing dishes. There was no dishwashing machine. You did everything by hand. And we raked up the leaves around here. We just kept everything in order.
Now, how many summers did you do that?
Oh, I did that for probably 5, 10, I would say every bit of 10 summers. And after that, I said no more,
That's when you decided to go to school.
Exactly, right.
What's your most fond memory of Shearer Cottage? Growing up, an adult, coming here. What was your fondest memory?
Well, there are so many of them that it's hard to pick out one in particular. I can honestly say that I've never had a bad summer down here.
Right.
One that I do remember very clearly is after the 1937 hurricane. Benny Ashburn, my cousin Sookie, and Bobby Jones were swimming between the jetties and the Oak Bluffs Pier.
Right.
And there was a large telephone pole that had sort of floated around there. And we were holding onto that pole, kicking and heading out over to what we thought was the boat dock. And when we looked, the thing was heading out to sea.
Oh, no.
And so we let loose of the log, and we didn't really know how to swim, but we did learn that day.
No.
And we swam right back
no.
to shore, but it was a little scary. But I don't know, you
Wow.
fellas are too young to remember that hurricane, but there was a lot of damage everywhere. All
Well,
up
I
and-
am. I don't know if Bob is.
Well,
Yeah.
why are you doing that, man? Alton was telling me about one time that he said he had done so much work at Shearer Cottage. He said,
Yeah, but that was Bob. That was Bob. That was Hurricane Bob.
Bob? Oh, okay,
Oh,
all
yeah.
right.
That
You
was,
said-
that was
you said-
Hurricane Bob.
No, the 38 hurricane, I guess it was either 38 or 37. But whatever year it was one of the worst hurricanes that the East Coast ever had.
East Coast got hit by.
Yeah, and the ferry couldn't leave. I think it was tied up for 2 or 3 days before it could get from the island back over to the mainland.
Wow.
But that was one of the most striking things that I remember. But everything else has been pleasant.
How was the time on the vineyard? You know, we talk about working. What was it? Was it a fun time for you guys being
It was
here?
fun time. One thing I did learn was that if you don't have a car down here, forget it.
Back in that time?
Even then, I had a bicycle.
Well, everybody had bikes.
Yeah.
I remember when I first came here, everybody had a bicycle. You didn't leave Oak Bluffs.
Yeah.
And you went from the Inkwell into town, into your house, into a
Yeah.
party, wherever that was.
Yeah, well, you couldn't do much with a bicycle. You couldn't invite a young lady out on a date. And I swore that after...
You can't? If that's all you have to work with.
Well, I decided after that I am not coming back down to the vineyard
Without
unless
a
I
car.
have a car. And that's been that way ever since. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Right.
Listen,
Uh-huh.
I know you guys are busy. I know that you're working with Lee and making sure everything is happening on the other side. We have Gretchen there waiting for us.
Uh-huh.
Listen,
Thank
don't
you
go
for-
away.
thank you for your
Alton and
time.
I will be back, and thank you for your
Okay,
time.
well, thank you for having me. Okay, all right.
Welcome back. We're here with Gretchen Tucker Underwood. And Gretchen has been explaining to us about her past times here with Shearer Cottage. And we'd like to hear for the camera
What
now.
was that again?
He
You
said
and
my
Lee-
past.
What was you, Lee?
Thelma and Louise.
Oh, gee, okay.
Yes.
Thelma and Louise.
Yeah,
I
Thelma
made a
and-
mistake and said that her and Lee, who you met earlier, was like Butch Cassidy and Sundance.
No.
I was corrected, and it was
That
Thelma
is-
and Louise.
That is correct.
Thelma and Louise, yes.
Now, Lee and I are, I think, maybe 5 months apart in age, but she's older, and I always made a
5
point.
months.
I always made a point of telling her she was older, and I was her younger friend, and that worked for a while.
It
that
always
was-
works just for a while.
That
a short
worked for
while.
a while,
Yeah.
except that Lee was able to get into an older crowd. Those were her creds. She could get into an older crowd.
She didn't
and
take you with her?
No, she did not. She
I
absolutely
think
did
she was
not.
in our crowd, my crowd.
Yeah,
the-
see,
younger
the
crowd.
youngster,
See,
so
the younger
youngster,
crowd,
so the
yes.
youngster got left behind.
Absolutely. In fact, Lee told me on an occasion she was going to a party, and I was getting all ready, and she said, "Well, you're not coming. You're not coming. This is for the older crowd." So I remind her of that every now and again. But Lee and I are. What's interesting and what's fascinating about Lee's side of the family is that her father and my father were friends. Then Lee and I became friends.
Beautiful.
And our children are friends, and our grandchildren are
4
friends. So
generations.
it's 4 generations of
You know one
friendship.
thing? I thought you guys were like cousins or something.
I know, everybody says that. Well,
Yeah.
her father was named Herbert, and my father was named Herbert, and we were both, blonde and fluffy, so everybody would mix us up. And she gets called Gretchen, and I get called Lee, and then the only thing we can say is true is both of our fathers were Herbert. So
Now, what are some of your what are some of the things that you remember going through here at Shearer?
well, I did not, I was not part of the crew up at Shearer, but I was a part of Lee's crew.
Okay.
So for me, Shearer was the place. If you were lucky, you got invited to come to Shearer to watch what was going on, the soiree, the gala, the party. And we would kind of wait over there until it was safe to come up. And then we would kind of join in like we had always been here. And it kind of worked. So we got to...
You were gate crashers.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that would be true.
Yes.
But with Lee's permission.
With permission.
With permission, that's what we did.
You always had a few of those, because I remember I must have been a gate crasher, because I knew Joanne. But Joanne was a few years younger, and I know she, her family. So I knew Joanne, and we used to come up here. And like you said, Gretchen, you had to wait your turn, and then
Wait for the opening.
Wait for the opening. That was correct. We waited for the opening.
Waited for the opening.
And usually out here, this was the dance floor. So if you waited until everybody was in full swing, you could kind of get up on them, and nobody would, who would know? You just couldn't dance to, you see, I happen to be a very good dancer, so you couldn't do your real flamboyant stuff out here, because then they'd say, well, who is that? So you'd have to kind of go off on the side and do stuff.
Then you check in and see if you were supposed to be here.
And then if you didn't get thrown out, then you could go buck wild, see. Then it was okay. Then it was all right.
Then you got cleared.
Yes, then we got cleared. But this is just an amazing, amazing place, because
year
for
after
us,
year after year.
This was where we came. The summer wasn't completed until we had been up to Shearer, or what was going on at Shearer, or who was at Shearer.
We all had a history here.
All of us did.
You know what amazes me? when Lee was describing her grandfather, and it was almost as though she was describing my great-grandfather, who was born of a slave master to a slave woman, and was set free when he was 15 and went north. That was the same story that my great-grandfather.
We all have a history like that, though.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there saying, wow. And then for him to go on to Hampton University and wind up on Martha's Vineyard to develop this historical place. I mean, that is mind-boggling. Any kid today that knew the history of him and this should not have a chance, because you know he struggled.
Oh, without a
knew
doubt.
he had to go through struggles.
Without a
Of course
doubt.
he did. Yeah.
And to do this,
But
and to be legendary, and now...
He took a hardship and turned it around, and like she said, he saw a business opportunity.
Right.
He saw that there were people that wanted to come here, didn't have a place where they could stay. He created a place for them to be able to stay, and the ladies were cooking, and they used to put some meals out here.
Yeah, but you know one thing? Here's a gentleman that left Hampton, taught at Hampton, left Hampton, came up to Boston, worked at the Parker House. He had to have had the business sense to have saved money, put money away, to come down and purchase land, even though land at that time was cheap.
Yes.
To purchase this and to have the vision to know if you build it, they will come.
You know, you say land was cheap. When my dad bought his house down here, I found the bill of sale a little while ago, and he bought the house for $1,500 and was writing to his aunt, could you loan me some money because I have this house I'm looking
Have an
at.
opportunity.
And I'm thinking like $1,500, but
That was a lot of money back then.
Back then,
Ooh.
that was huge.
That
That
was
was
huge.
absolutely huge. So for him to envision this, I mean, this wasn't a little cottage. This was a business.
Right.
Yeah.
So to be able to have the money and the wherewithal and the vision to create this was just amazing.
Oh, great
Not to take anything away from him, but if he lived as a slave with nothing, it wouldn't be that hard for him to save.
Yeah, you got it right. You got to hit the nail on the head. But, he bought his family, his wife,
Yeah.
his children, his grandchildren.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, you look at some of the pictures that they have next door, and you see the crowd, and you see, man, history. Just history. No, just once. If I had just one opportunity to sit down with that man
Yeah.
and to sit at his feet and listen.
That's why
Right.
we have to do it today. My mother is over there on the other side. She's 95, and that's what we have to do. We have to sit and listen to what our elders can teach
right.
us, and
That's
we
right,
would be
exactly.
shocked and surprised and endeared about how much they went through to get us to where we are today.
To where we are today.
Yeah.
Listen,
All
don't go away. Gretchen, you're one of the best. We'll be right back with David. Stay tuned. Hey, we're back at Shearer Cottage. We're celebrating the 100th anniversary of Shearer Cottage, and we're with one of the heirs, David Van Allen, Jr.
And this
That's right.
David is the son of Lee Van Allen, who was here earlier.
Yes.
Now, David, you were a little too young to have worked up here when the kitchen was open.
Right.
But there's a list of other things you were responsible to do. Now,
Yes.
what were those things?
I did everything from very early on in May, the family would come down to open.
Mm-hmm.
So I did everything from pull the shutters off the windows, cut the grass, rake the leaves, wipe down all the furniture to get it set up for the season. Take the mothballs off all the beds, clean up all the newspaper, get rid of all the spider webs, help my grandmother plant. In these cracks in the patio here, there'd be grass that were overgrown. My job was to basically get all the grass and moss out of the cracks. There was a badminton court here. I had to rake the rocks and pull the grass mounds that grew through the
Pebbles.
Through the pebbles.
Let me ask you a question. Did you have any social life?
Yeah, that was after. It was, my grandmother and
You had
my
to earn
aunt,
that time, huh?
Right. They got you up at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And it was summer vacation, so as most of my friends slept till 11, I had put in a full day's work, usually at that point, at 12 and 13 years of age. But it was, it was just something you did. You got rid of it.
Yes, you did.
It was a kind of a rite of passage. That's what you did. Get up, let's go.
Did your sister do the same?
My sister did, yeah. She had more of I would say the laundry detail, a lot of the
Cleaning the
cleaning,
rooms.
yeah, cleaning of the rooms and things that involve that sweeping. I had more of the manual labor, cut the grass, trim the hedges. Sometimes it was paint the trim, if there were gutters and there were leaves in the gutters, whatever I was able to do.
Now, your mother and Aunt Liz, who were running it back then, I mean, these are two women that you did not say no to.
No.
Now, I have two examples of how they did me. There was a storm. Some shingles had blown off the roof. In the middle of the storm, they called me. They said, Alton, there's a leak. So I said, yeah, well, in the morning, when the light comes and it stops raining, I'll get up there and try to patch it. And they looked at me like, son, we said get up there and patch this now.
Right.
And in the storm, I was up on this roof, patching, in the middle of the night, patching the roof. Yeah. The second one was Horace, who was here.
You're right.
Okay, Horace has a group of men come up from Bermuda,
Bermuda,
right?
yeah.
To fish with him. Okay, and one year they came here, they did all this fishing, and they cleaned all this fish, and they threw it over in the park there.
Ooh.
So they had left the island. It was either late that day or the next day, the fish came alive.
Yes.
So I get the call. I come up here, and I look for them. I call them. They come out of the rooms they were working in. And I said, Aunt Liz, Doris, what's going on? So I said, what is that smell? They said, that's why you're here.
Yeah.
And they gave me a rake and some garbage bags, and they said, we know it's coming from over there. Go find it and get that stuff out of here. I looked at them. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But you didn't tell them no. So
That's true. You worked side by side with them. If you didn't know what to do, they had no problem showing you.
Let me ask you a question. If you had one memorable moment, and you probably have several, but what's your most memorable moment about being a part of the Shearer Cottage history?
Just learning the history. Understanding what my grandmother and my aunt made sure as a child growing up that you knew why you were here. There weren't that many people fortunate to come to the island. All my friends were back in Boston. And the reason I was here is because someone, forefather before me, made the decision to come here and made a decision to open up. And looking back 100 years from now, he probably didn't see this vision. Who knew, what it would be today? But I think that was, most memorable was just listening to stories of all the people that came through. I used to read the registers as kids.
Who was your most memorable guy? What guy did you thought that you?
When I came up, believe it or not, as a young kid, my Uncle Benny had the Commodores.
Right, I remember those.
And they used to practice in the little house, and they used to stay in here. And again, before they went on tour, before they were
big,
who they were, they were
Who
just
they
a
became.
band. Yeah,
Right.
And I was very much into the noise that came out of there. Playing the drums, playing the guitar.
Right.
And I still dabble. I don't play fluently, but it got, my music, I would say, somewhat talent. I played drums and drum and bugle for a few years. it got my talent. You know, it spurred something in me. And I used to love coming up here and sitting down in front of Lionel Richie and watching him sing and dance and play around and goof off. And I thought I wanted to be in the band.
Right.
As a young kid, I can remember my cousin got married right here on this patio, and they asked me to come. I played the tambourine, and I might have been 12 years old, in front of 150, 200 people.
Right.
And at first you're the shy 12-year-old, and then you get up there, and all the people, you came alive. All of a sudden, I am somebody. And but those, I would say, that's it. Those are memorable moments. Oh my God, news chapter.
News chapter. Listen, we're going to be right back. Don't go away.
Good afternoon.
Howdy.
Welcome, and thank you for sharing the 100th anniversary of Shearer Cottage. My name is Lauren Van Allen, and I am the great-great-granddaughter of Charles Shearer, the founder of Shearer Cottage.
All right.
After the program, we invite you to visit the side porch where there are photos and articles about the Shearer Cottage and the Shearer family. Charles Shearer joined the congregation of the historic Temple Baptist Church in Boston in 1893. And now I'd like to introduce the Minister of Music for the Tremont Temple, Dr. Jeffrey Hicks. Dr. Hicks.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a marvelous and historic occasion. It's my first time on the vineyard, and I bring you greetings from Tremont Temple Baptist Church in Boston, where Charles Shearer was a member.
Welcome.
It's in his memory that we gather here today, and I just want to offer a short prayer to say thank you to all of you in his memory, in his honor, for all that he did. Let's bow our heads together. Lord, we thank you for this historic occasion. We ask you to bless this family and bless all that have gathered here this afternoon for this historic celebration, and we give you thanks for this gathering together. We ask you to bless it in a special way. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Hi, everyone. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Kathy Burton. I'm the chairman of the Board of Selectmen here in Oak Bluffs. What an amazing day. I have goosebumps thinking about the history in the past 100 years plus of this special place. The Shearer family story is one of great courage and great commitment. Commitment to family, to community, and to the American dream. And here we are all, the American dream. The town fathers and the town mothers are very appreciative of the contribution of the Shearer family to the rich history of the town of Oak Bluffs. So on behalf of the entire Board of Selectmen, I'd like to present the Shearer family with a certificate of recognition. And it says, this certificate of recognition and appreciation is presented to the Shearer family for 100 years of extraordinary hospitality and community service here at Shearer Cottage. May it hang for another 100 years plus in Shearer Cottage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kathy, for this honor. Thank the Board of Selectmen. This is a very special occasion for our family. We've been here for more than 100 years. So many of our relationships actually were founded on Oak Bluffs. You know, we met our husbands, or my grandparents met, or my parents met, cousins met. So Oak Bluffs has a special place in the heart of the Shearer family. You know that. So now I'm going to put my glasses on. And I too would like to thank our friends and our family for joining us today. So many of you have helped me. I'm not going to mention all of you, but I just want to say thank you for helping us prepare for this special occasion. I would like to thank, in particular, Lindsay Lee, oral history curator at the Martha's Vineyard Museum, who loaned us the film on Shearer Summer Theater, Liz White's film, as well as an interview that she did with my mom, Doris Jackson, some years ago. And that information and poster boards of Shearer family pictures are on the side yard, and I do invite you all to please view them. They're very interesting, and I think you'll enjoy seeing them. I'd also like to thank my sister-in-law, Emily Thomas, who's been hanging with me all summer, as well as for this event. I truly appreciate her support. It's been very special to me. Gretchen Coleman Thomas, the event planner whom I asked to help us with this event because I was so busy dealing with Shearer Cottage. She unfortunately cannot be here today because of an illness, but I want to give special thanks to Gretchen Coleman Thomas as well. And our good wishes for a speedy recovery. Dr. Hicks, thank you so much. We're delighted to have you. My cousin Horace Shearer for his financial support. And last but not least, I want to thank my old friend, my very long, we shouldn't say old friend, long-time friend, Gretchen Tucker Underwood. She came over yesterday with a gorgeous bouquet of flowers from hers and her mother's garden, Mary Tucker. Thank you, Mary, as well. And she noticed that our yard needed a little help. And she worked yesterday as well as this morning to prepare the grounds for this event. And I'm telling you, when I had to go over and run an errand, I mean, tears came to my eyes because that's the kind of happening, that's the kind of thing that happens with friends and family on Martha's Vineyard. And that's why Shearer Cottage was able to be here and exist for 100 years. Support like that and love like that. So I want to thank you so much. As I went about gathering pictures and materials to share with you today, I came across the eulogy of Sadie Shearer Ashburn, written in 1978 by her niece, Liz Pope White. Liz Pope White, the writer, the actor, the innkeeper, the filmmaker, the Broadway dresser, and loving family member. As you know, Liz Pope White was or as you may know, Liz Pope White was the granddaughter of Charles and Henrietta Shearer. She is the older sister to my mom, Doris Jackson, and her younger brother was Lincoln Pope. Aunt Sadie operated Shearer Cottage for more than 50 years with great love and grace. Her eulogy, that was written by Aunt Liz, I think tells the Shearer Cottage story quite well. So I'd like to share with you some excerpts of that eulogy. Before the Civil War, Aunt Sadie's father, Charles Shearer, was born of a slave master and his slave on a plantation in Virginia in 1854. Charles learned to hunt and fish and actually spent most of his time in the surrounding woods. When the Northern Army was pushing through the Confederate States, the master, Shearer, decided to move his slaves and his money and his other valuables to Georgia. Charles, on the other hand, decided to join the Northern Army. So Master Shearer had his other slaves or overseers give him a beating and chained him in the barn. And as the Northern Army moved quickly towards his plantation, and he left with his valuables and most of his slaves, he left behind Charles Shearer. And that's where the Northern soldiers found him. And they allowed him to travel with him. And he did what he knew best. He hunted and he fished and he served as a scout for them for the remainder of the war. And as a young man, he returned to Virginia, Lynchburg area, and he worked as a laborer. Then he enrolled in Hampton Institute. And as you know, Hampton Institute was an institution that was started to educate former slaves, free blacks, as Henrietta was, and Native Americans. He graduated and he taught there for several years. He met Henrietta, his wife, at Hampton. They had all gone to Hampton to learn to read and write. They were married, and with their young family, they moved north. And Charles in Boston prospered as the head waiter at two very prominent hotels, the Parker House and the Young's Hotel. Now, Cottage City, which is the former name of Oak Bluffs, was a religious town at that time, very religious. And so Charles visited Cottage City. He was a devout Baptist. And he bought this property, which actually overlooks the Baptist temple grounds. The temple actually, I believe, burned down in the 1940s. But as a gentleman with his family, he would go down and pray in the Baptist temple. At the turn of the century, when black people were struggling up the ladder, and there was no place for them for a summer vacation on Martha's Vineyard, no hotels, no eating places were open to blacks then. At that time, very few black families owned homes on Martha's Vineyard. So with their family cottage, Charles Shearer, with the help of his daughter Sadie Shearer, began to build a summer inn. This inn was open in the season of 1912. Sadie's linens were washed in tin tubs with lye soap made from the fat left over from her meats. Her cooking was done on a coal and wood stove where delicious meals were concocted every day for guests. The word started to get out. Shearer Cottage was a good place to come for a truly fine vacation, catering to blacks. Many young people came and earned money for their education by waiting on Shearer's table, serving as chambermaids, and working in the kitchen. And during less prosperous seasons, many times there were more mouths to feed sitting around Aunt Sadie's table in the kitchen than there were paying guests sitting at the table in the dining room. But Aunt Sadie fed them all. William H. Lewis, the first black Assistant Attorney General of the United States under President Taft, sat at her table. Judge Watson, the first black judge in New York City, and his family sat at her table. Harry T. Burleigh, the famous arranger and soloist who preserved the Negro spirituals, sat at her table, as did the Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Sr. and the Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Paul Robeson, Ethel Waters, and on and on and on. This gives you a snapshot of Shearer Cottage's beginnings 100 years ago and the legacy that we gather here to celebrate. My friend Lynn Edmonds recently invited me to an NAACP fundraiser at Hooked. And I'd like to share a quote with you from Ms. Michelle Norris, who was a journalist at National Public Radio, and she was the featured speaker at that event. Ms. Norris said, quote, "Our history is our wealth." This statement truly resonated with me. Generations of Shearers, past, present, and hopefully future, have worked tirelessly to preserve the legacy of Charles Shearer. And our history as a family is our wealth. And now I'd just like to take another moment of your time and invite my granddaughter, Camille Van Allen, up to share with you an excerpt from her college essay as she prepares for her college application process. Thank you.
I would like to dedicate this to my great-grandmother, Doris Jackson. As I'm coming up the hill, with the pebbles crushing beneath the tires of my grandmother's blue Jeep that needs to be desperately washed, I notice the dew amongst the freshly cut grass. I am extremely tired, for it is so early, but I must get the room ready before the guests for room number 6 arrive at 9. I reach the century-old, storied white porch and try to tread lightly so I won't wake the guests in the other room. I snag the crisply folded baby blue sheets and place them outside the room while I quietly get the key from the apron pocket. I look up into the morning sky. The sun is shining, and I realize I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm home. I'm on Martha's Vineyard. In my younger years, Martha's Vineyard was a place I simply took advantage of every summer. It was a part of my life. The main reason my family resides on this small, well-known island is a quaint inn known as Shearer Cottage. Shearer Cottage started out as a laundry and soon turned into a bed and breakfast. My great-great-great-grandfather, Charles Shearer, first opened this inn to offer space for African-American clientele to enjoy their stay on Martha's Vineyard when nowhere else offered a place for them to stay. Even as a runaway slave, my great-great-great-grandfather became excessively educated and ultimately a successful businessman. As Shearer Cottage is still going strong, I am honored to say I am the 6th generation to operate the inn, and certainly will not be the last. Shearer Cottage will be open for many more generations to come. I contribute to the family inn by serving the position as the laundry assistant and junior chambermaid, as previous generations have done before me. I work alongside my siblings, aunts, mother, and grandmother. I work every day to ensure that all the laundry is done, put the freshly washed sheets in the rooms where it is needed, and make sure all the plants are watered to stay healthy in the summer heat. When years pass and I grow older, I will become the innkeeper, as my grandmother, great-grandmother, and great-great-grandmother have done in the past. This position is usually given to the oldest and most experienced female in the upcoming generation. While my grandmother is the innkeeper for now, my aunt will be the next, and I will be the one after. This expectation of carrying on the legacy is a huge commitment and may even be a struggle, but it is what my family has always done for over 100 years, and it is what my family will continue to do. My great-great-great-grandfather's courage to do something that served his community shines through me every day. He fought through slavery, he made it through school, and he made it through discrimination, racism, and hate. My integrity and hard work ethic is from my great-grandpa Shearer. One day I will do something as amazing as he did, that my great-great-great-granddaughter will be as proud as I am of him. When it comes my turn, I am going to continue my family's legacy and one day carry out my own. When I look up, smelling downy on the crisply folded sheets outside room number 6, I know my Grandpa Shearer is smiling down at me, knowing my future is as bright as the morning sky.
Closes our program. Be sure to take a look at the pictures and the film of Shearer Summer Theater, and let's eat, drink, and be merry.
What do you think, man?
Another enjoyable show. Very informative.
Anybody ask you a question? Why did you go with me like that, man? Tell me that I was the old man.
No, you know something. You know I'm just joking.
You just joking?
Yeah, I mean, you did used to babysit me. so I have a tendency to go back to that period.
All right, okay. I'm not going to go any further.
Okay,
listen,
leave it alone.
Great.
Yeah.
We got another one coming up on the 6th together.
At the end, well.
Right.
Exactly.
And this is a memorable time, 100 years.
100 years.
This is unbelievable. So we're going to say, until next time, this is your host, Bob Tankard, co-host Alton Hardaway. See you later.